Jessica's ABDL Journey Part 6. Jessica and Kevin shared a shower later that morning. She knew that he had been the right person to lose her virginity to. Nothing had changed between them. If anything, their bond was stronger now than it had been before. "You could stay over again tonight, if you wanted," Kevin suggested to Jessica, as he gently shampooed her long hair. "We could go to the beach later. Tom, Kate, Dan and the others said they'd be there at about 2. Then I could drive you back here. Sound good to you?" "Yep, I've got nowhere I need to be anytime soon." Jessica watched as Kevin's smile grew, his whole face lighting up. She hadn't realized before just how much having her stay with him, without having to make excuses as to why she couldn't, meant to him. She didn't like wearing the nappies, but she liked waking up dry, and she liked waking up next to Kevin, and if wearing them meant both were possible, she would be happy to wear them until she grew out of the bedwetting. Jessica looked over at Kevin, who was still sleeping beside her, snoring softly. Since wearing a nappy the first time, Jessica had been staying at Kevin's house regularly, and Kevin had stayed at hers a few times as well, although as she didn't have the luxury of a double bed, both preferred staying at his house. At first she had been self-conscious of the nappies, but she knew Kevin accepted them, and she was beginning to accept them herself as well. And she loved the fact that now when she awoke in the mornings she could shut her eyes and drift back to sleep. She was so used to having to get out of bed as soon as she woke to shower and change the sheets. It was rare that she ever had a lie-in before the nappies. The illuminated green numbers on Kevin's digital clock said 4:37. Jessica felt the crotch of her nappy. It was warm and very swollen. She and Kevin had been out drinking earlier that night, and she had wet out the large quantities of alcohol in her system in her sleep. She knew that when she drank she was prone to more than one wetting, but didn't think the nappy would hold another without leaking. She would have to change into a clean one. Jessica slipped out of bed, and the shift in the bed woke Kevin. "Where are you going?" he mumbled groggily. Jessica paused. She still couldn't help but feel slightly uncomfortable talking about her nappies around Kevin. "I think I need to change my. Kevin sat up in bed. He didn't wait for Jessica to finish her sentence. "Can I do it?" "What?" "If you don't mind, I'd like to. I want to take care of you." Okay. Jessica didn't know what to say. She couldn't imagine anybody actually wanting to change an adult's nappy, but here was Kevin actively volunteering. If you want to, then I guess you can." "Come lie back on the bed," Kevin ordered Jessica, and she obeyed. He kissed her quickly before getting out of the bed himself. He turned on his lamp, and then went over to his desk. It had 6 drawers in it, 3 on each side, and he had assigned the bottom right drawer to Jessica's nappies. He pulled out a fresh one, and a box of baby wipes, before returning to her on the bed. He leaned over her, pulled down her pajama shorts and started to unfasten the tapes. Jessica felt slightly uncomfortable. She hadn't been changed like this since she was a small child, which was so long ago she could hardly remember it. But she felt comfortable being naked around Kevin, and he seemed to be enjoying himself. She had started to notice that he really seemed to like playing the father figure when he was around her. He was never patronizing or dominating, but he seemed to like caring for her. Tucking her into bed, washing her hair in the shower, and now changing her nappy. Kevin wiped Jessica delicately, as if she was something precious, and she liked that. He slid the clean nappy under her, and he fastened the tape securely. Jessica was impressed. He had done a better job than she did herself. "There you are, baby," he said, kissing Jessica's belly just above the nappy's waistband before pulling up her shorts. "All done." "Thank you." Jessica didn't really know what else to say. She had liked it, him changing her. Being cared for like that. But she didn't want to say that to Kevin. She didn't want Kevin to feel like he should be changing her every night. She knew he might have just offered to be nice, and that maybe having done it once he'd never want to do it again, and she certainly didn't want him to feel like he ought to. "I like caring for you." Back in bed, Kevin cuddled up against her. "Now go to sleep. I want to see that nappy nice and wet in the morning." "You awake, Jess?" Kevin asked. Jessica groaned beside him, barely. "Can I talk to you about something?" "Yeah, what?" Promise me you'll hear me out, listen to what I say. Kevin asked. I promise, Jessica assured him. What is it? Are you okay? Yeah, Kevin nodded, everything's good. It's just, last night. I really liked it when you let me change you. I really like seeing you in nappies, I really like it, it's sorta like a turn on. Jessica didn't say anything. It's not why I suggested you wear them, don't think I've been using you or anything, I haven't been, I promise. I liked you before I knew you wet the bed, but that time in the tent, that first time when you said you'd wet the bed, it was so, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept thinking about being in that bed with you when you wet it, but then you seemed to hate it. Wetting the bed, I mean. I thought maybe you were just too embarrassed to admit you liked it, but then when you came over and wouldn't go to sleep I realized you didn't like it. And I felt terrible, I really did. I didn't mean to embarrass or upset you, I just kind of assumed you would like it, that you just needed me to show you it was okay. I felt so guilty when I realized I was wrong. But I still wanted to be able to share a bed with you, not because of the bedwetting, but because I love you, Jess. And so I looked around on the internet, and I found a website which suggested buying nappies, and I didn't know I would, find them a turn on. I just wanted you to be happy, I just thought if you wore them you might wake up happier. But as soon as I saw you in one it was such a turn on, and I didn't know it would be, but it was. And every time you put one on I want to be the one putting it on for you, I want to take care of you, I want to be the one looking after you, and I feel like I should tell you this now, because I felt so bad after last night, after you let me change you, and I didn't want you to think I was using you. I'm not, I never tried to get you to do anything you didn't want to for me, I always put you first, I really did. A solitary tear ran down Kevin's nose, hanging from the tip for a split second before falling. Jessica didn't know what to say, she hadn't expected Kevin to come out with this. And she certainly hadn't expected herself to like what he was saying. If someone had told her 6 months ago that she would end up going out with somebody who was turned on by her bedwetting, she wouldn't have believed that was possible. She wouldn't have believed it was possible that anyone could find bedwetting anything other than disgusting, and even if she had, she wouldn't have let somebody use her like that. But this was Kevin, he was different, he wasn't using her, she knew that. I'm sorry, Kevin said as Jessica's silence started to become uncomfortable. If you don't want to see me anymore I'd understand. Remember when I said if you hated me because of the bedwetting I'd understand? Jessica asked, you said I was being silly, that it didn't matter. You're being silly as well, I don't not want to see you, of course I don't want to stop seeing you. I just don't know what to say. I liked it, last night, with you taking care of me. I just never thought bedwetting and nappies could be anything other than horrible. I never thought of it as anything else. You don't like it then? I don't know. I like wearing nappies, but maybe that's just because I hate waking up wet. So, you'd never wet the bed for me, with me there, in it? Kevin asked, his eyes hopeful. Jessica didn't want to say no to Kevin after he'd just spent so long explaining himself to her, even though she knew she wouldn't enjoy it. She thought that maybe it wouldn't be too bad though, if she was doing it for Kevin, maybe I could try it, I guess, if it's what you want. Really? You mean that? Kevin looked like a little kid who'd just been told he was allowed to choose anything he wanted from a large toy shop, tonight. Not tonight, Jessica said, I've got to go home tonight. Maybe tomorrow night. Kevin hugged Jessica tight, I love you. He said. Jessica felt warm all over, she had thought he'd said he loved her earlier, but he'd been saying so much, and she'd been trying to take it all in, and she hadn't been sure. I love you too, she said, and she smiled as she realized that she really meant it. Jessica had a knot in her stomach, she couldn't sleep, she was too nervous. She had promised Kevin she would wet the bed with him in it, and she knew that now she would have to do it. There was no way around it. She would have to fall asleep, he wouldn't believe her if she said she couldn't, she knew that. And he wouldn't get angry if she didn't wet, but he'd be disappointed, and that would be worse. This would be her first night waking up in a wet bed since Kevin had first introduced her to nappies, over 3 weeks ago. She had bought her own supply for home, and had happily said goodbye to wet sheets forever. Or at least, she had thought so. But now she was lying in Kevin's bed, the plastic sheet stretched across the mattress, and no nappy between her legs. And she knew when she woke up the next morning she would be wet, and that Kevin would be wet too. It made her cringe just thinking about it. She knew that he expected it, and she knew that it wasn't any different to him removing her wet nappy, and yet it still scared her to think about it. It was still keeping her awake.